My husband's dad called me selfish and even took my name off the baby shower invites because I refused to give him my late mother's jewelry for his new wife. "It's just stuff, why are you so petty?" he said. But now, they're apologizing through tears 10 months later. I'm Clara. I live just outside Asheville, North Carolina. The kind of place where summer smells like honeysuckle and screen doors slam shut in the distance. My husband, Brennan, and I had a quiet life. We met at a small gallery opening downtown, both pretending we understood abstract art, and both laughing when we realized we didn't. Brennan's solid. Calm. The kind of guy who cooks you breakfast when you're sad and remembers the names of all your coworkers. I'd never really had that kind of stability before him. My dad died when I was a teenager, and my mom was, well, she was everything to me. She worked long shifts as a nurse, but always made time to sit on the porch with me at night, listening to cicadas and talking about anything and everything. She passed away from cancer 5 years ago. I was 28. Before she died, she gave me her jewelry box. Not because it was filled with treasure, it wasn't, but because she knew every piece had a story. A tiny gold pendant shaped like a leaf, I used to tug on it while sitting on her lap. A delicate ring with a cracked opal that she wore to every wedding, funeral, and parent-teacher conference. And a bracelet she said reminded her of her own mother, who I never met. After she died, I never wore the pieces. But I kept the box on my dresser like a quiet reminder that someone had loved me deeply, and I had loved her back. Brennan understood this. He's not sentimental, but he gets it. His mom died when he was 13, and his relationship with his dad, Raymond, was always a little strained, more drill sergeant than dad. Still, Brennan tried. He always tried. When Raymond married Blair, a woman he met at a charity auction, we weren't surprised. She's younger, glamorous, always dressed like she was about to film a skincare commercial. She calls herself a wellness intuitive, which I think is code for someone who reads a lot of self-help blogs and charges people for advice. I kept my distance but was polite. She was Raymond's new wife, and Brennan wanted peace. Everything was mostly fine until I got pregnant. That changed everything. Brennan and I were ecstatic. We'd been trying for nearly a year, and when that little test showed 2 lines, I cried in the bathroom and immediately called him, even though he was just 10 minutes away. When we told Raymond and Blair, they were over the moon. Or at least, Blair was. She started talking about colors, themes, energetic alignment for the baby's spirit, whatever that means. She offered to host the baby shower at their new lake house on Lake Lure. Brennan hesitated, but I said yes. At the time, I thought it was a kind gesture. It wasn't. Within a week, Blair had taken control of everything. She created a Pinterest board called Baby Sunshine and sent it to everyone involved. Yellow, gold, ivory, it looked like a wedding. When I suggested something simpler, she brushed it off. "This is about celebrating life," she told me on the phone, voice breathy like she was delivering a TED Talk. "You should just enjoy it. Let me handle the details." I let it go. I didn't want to start a war over napkins. But then, things got weird. My friend Anika texted me a photo of the baby shower invitation she got in the mail. It was beautiful, sure, thick cream cardstock with gold foil, but what hit me wasn't the design. It was the names listed as hosts. Hosted by Blair and Raymond Whitmore, no mention of me. Not even Brennan. Just them. I blinked at the text and read it again. My heart dropped. When I brought it up, Blair was shocked I had an issue. "It's just tradition," she said. "The hosts are the ones who plan everything. It's not about ego, Clara." But it was. It was always about ego with her. I told Brennan. He was furious but calm in the way he gets, that scary calm where his voice gets quieter and his jaw locks. He called his dad. The call ended in shouting. I didn't go to the shower. Brennan didn't either. Blair sent me a long text that started with "I'm disappointed in your energy lately" and ended with "You need to release your attachment to the past." I didn't reply. But it wasn't over. Not even close. A week later, I got a call from Raymond. He sounded irritated. Not angry, just impatient, like I was holding up a project he wanted to finish. I want to talk to you about something important, he said. Blair's been thinking it would be meaningful to wear something of your mom's to the baby shower. To honor her memory. I froze. What? Just a piece of jewelry. A necklace or something. She wants to feel connected. You have that box, right? I gripped the phone harder. You want me to give her my mom's jewelry? The pieces she left for me? She'd just wear them. Maybe keep one. It's just stuff, Clara. You're being selfish. Why are you so petty? That word. Petty. I couldn't speak for a second. My throat was dry. I'm not giving away my mother's things, I said finally. Not for a baby shower. Not ever. He didn't like that. The next day, my name was completely scrubbed from the baby shower website Blair had set up. The photos showed her posing next to a massive floral arch, holding a faux baby bump for aesthetic. She even posted a story with the caption, "Manifesting motherhood for this beautiful child about to join us." Join us. The gall. I stopped speaking to them after that. Brennan supported me. He didn't like confrontation, but he was disgusted by how far they went. Blair's energy talk, Raymond's dismissiveness, we were done. Laurel, Brennan's sister, stepped up and threw us a small, sweet baby shower with our closest friends. We had homemade cupcakes and paper lanterns. It wasn't extravagant, but it felt real. Like us. And then, 10 months passed. Life became about diapers, spit up, midnight feedings, and this tiny person who looked a little like Brennan and somehow also like my mom. Theo. He made everything else fade, for a while. Until Laurel called again. Raymond had been hospitalized. Heart problems. Not immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that Blair was panicking. Laurel said they'd been asking about us. About Theo. About me. Brennan wanted to go. I didn't know what I wanted. But I agreed. Not for them, for Theo. We walked into that sterile hospital room, and it was like the air changed. Raymond looked smaller. He wasn't wearing his usual button-down, just a hospital gown that made him look pale and frail. He didn't yell. He didn't lecture. He cried. Clara, he said, voice hoarse, I was wrong. I let Blair push too hard. I didn't see how much it hurt you. I didn't say anything. I let him talk. Blair sat beside him, her mascara smudged, face tired. I thought, if I wore something of hers, I'd be accepted. I thought it would make me more part of this family. I didn't mean to hurt you. I finally spoke. Quietly. It wasn't yours to take. She nodded. That's all. I didn't forgive them. Not then. Maybe not even now. But something cracked open in that room. And that's where things really began to shift. After that hospital visit, we didn't speak much for a few weeks. It was a weird, liminal space, like we'd stepped into the hallway between two rooms. One full of old anger and silence. The other full of apologies and second chances we weren't sure we were ready to accept. Raymond was recovering slowly. Blair sent a few check-in texts to Brennan, short and polite, hope you're all well, would love to drop off something for Theo, and once, oddly, sending healing vibrations. I didn't reply to any of them, but I didn't block her either. Progress, I guess. Then one Sunday afternoon, Brennan looked up from his phone and said, Dad wants to come over. I was standing at the sink, washing Theo's bottles. I didn't answer right away. My gut reaction was no, a sharp, instinctual no that came from the same place you flinch when something hot gets too close. But Brennan just said, we don't have to decide now. Just, think about it. And I did. For days, I sat with it. I thought about Theo, about what kind of family I wanted him to grow up in. I didn't want to teach him to hold grudges. But I also didn't want him thinking it was okay for people to disrespect you, then get to stroll back in with no real consequences. So, finally, I told Brennan, okay. He can come. But we set the rules. No Blair this time. Just him. When Raymond arrived, he brought a small bag with him, filled with old picture books Brennan used to love. He looked nervous. Not the usual overly confident, booming man I'd known for years. He knocked like a guest, not like someone who used to let himself in without asking. Theo was in his bouncer, kicking his legs and squealing at the ceiling fan. Raymond watched him for a long moment. His eyes got glassy again. "He's beautiful," he said softly. Brennan nodded. "He's a good kid." Raymond sat down slowly, stiff from recovery. I wanted to say more at the hospital, but it didn't feel right. I kept thinking I had time to fix things. Then suddenly I didn't. He looked at me then. Really looked. "You were right, Clara. About all of it. I pushed too hard. I didn't listen. I let Blair do things that weren't hers to do. And I stood by it. I thought I was doing what was best for the family. Turns out I was just doing what made me feel important." I didn't answer right away. I was holding Theo then, watching his little fists clench and unclench. "You made me feel like I didn't matter," I said finally. "You made me feel like my grief was inconvenient. Like the memories I had of my mom were just clutter. That box, those pieces, they're not things. They're the last pieces of her that I get to keep." He nodded. "I know. And I'm sorry. I can't take back what I said, or how I handled it. But I hope someday you'll believe I meant this, all of this, sincerely." I appreciated the apology. I truly did. But there's a strange feeling that comes after an apology you waited a year for. It doesn't fix everything. It doesn't erase the nights I cried over feeling pushed out of my own baby shower. It doesn't uninvite Blair from the center of moments she had no right to own. Still, it was something. It was a start. We sat in silence for a while. Brennan passed out tea. Raymond asked if he could hold Theo. I hesitated, not because I thought he'd drop him or anything, but because I wasn't sure if I was ready for that image, the man who once called me petty rocking my son in his arms. But I handed Theo over. And something in my chest softened when I saw him cradle that tiny body so carefully, so reverently. He didn't try to make speeches. Didn't offer more justifications. He just sat there, rocking Theo slowly while the baby blinked up at him with wide, curious eyes. The next week, Blair emailed me. Emailed, not texted. I guess she figured it was less intrusive. She wrote that she respected my space, that she was in therapy now, spiritual and actual, and she'd been reflecting a lot. She said she didn't expect forgiveness, but she wanted to offer something. A gesture, she called it. It was a small velvet box. Inside were 2 new charms, one with Theo's birthstone, and one with a tiny engraved footprint and his name. I didn't know what to make of it. It wasn't my mother's jewelry, and it never would be, but it was sweet. Thoughtful, even. I still didn't trust her. But part of me saw that gesture for what it was, a peace offering. An acknowledgement. I didn't wear the charms. Not yet. But I put them in the drawer next to my mother's box. Not with it. Just, near. Raymond started coming by more often. Always respectful. Never unannounced. He asked before picking up Theo. He listened more. Sometimes he just sat with Brennan in the garage while they worked on an old bench Brennan had been restoring for the nursery. He didn't talk about the past much. And neither did I. But then, a few weeks later, something strange happened. Laurel stopped by on a Saturday afternoon. We were sitting on the porch, the baby monitor resting on the table between us, Theo napping inside. She looked tired, distracted. After a few minutes of small talk, she said, "Clara, I need to tell you something. About Blair. I looked up. She tried to take some of your mom's jewelry. Before she even asked you. I felt my stomach drop. What? She came to me first. Asked if I thought you'd notice if something went missing. Said she'd keep it safe until she had a chance to bring it up to you. I stared at her. The porch felt too still, the breeze too cold all of a sudden. She said that to you? Laurel nodded. I shut her down. Immediately. I didn't want to make things worse, so I didn't say anything then. But I figured, you should know. I just sat there, silent. All this time, I thought the request, the ask, was the beginning. But it wasn't. She'd already been planning something. She'd already seen my grief as something she could borrow. Take, even. It wasn't just overstepping. It was entitlement. It was theft of the emotional kind. And I wasn't sure anymore if an apology, no matter how tearful, could cover that. But I also wasn't sure what I was supposed to do with the information now. Confront her? Drag it all up again when we were finally starting to rebuild? I looked at Laurel, who was watching me carefully. You don't have to decide anything, she said. I didn't want you to keep offering grace to someone who didn't earn it. I thanked her. Genuinely. Because that kind of honesty? That's rare. And now, once again, I was standing at a threshold, the line between moving on and holding someone accountable. And this time, I wasn't sure which side I belonged on. The days after Laurel's confession sat heavy on me, like carrying a soaked blanket you couldn't quite put down. I kept replaying it, Blair asking Laurel if I'd notice if a piece of my mom's jewelry went missing. Not asking for permission. Not testing the waters. Just plotting. Quietly. Manipulatively. That changed something in me. I'd spent the last few months trying to be the bigger person. Trying to create space for healing, to be patient for Brennan's sake, for Theo's. Trying to believe that maybe people can grow. That sometimes, apologies mean something. But this wasn't just a mistake anymore. It was intention. It was manipulation dressed up as spiritual language and energy. And now I couldn't unknow it. I didn't confront Blair right away. I needed time to think. To sort through what was anger, what was grief, and what was a kind of hollowed-out sadness that settled into your bones when someone treats something sacred like it's just an accessory. Brennan noticed I was quieter, a little withdrawn. He asked if I was okay, and I said, I'm just tired. It wasn't a lie, not completely. The truth was, I didn't want to tell him. Not yet. Because once I did, I knew what would happen. Brennan's world is structured by logic and loyalty. And if he found out what Blair had done, what she'd really done, he'd want to cut ties completely. He'd go full no contact. And part of me wanted that too. But another part, the softer part that remembered him sobbing quietly after his dad's surgery, that part wasn't ready to pull the plug. So I waited. I watched. And then came the next unexpected twist. Blair invited us to a brunch. An actual invitation, thick cardstock again, of course. A fancy little envelope with gold cursive. Spring renewal gathering. I snorted when I read it. It was being held at their lake house, the same one where the baby shower had happened without me. Without us. I almost threw it out. But curiosity, that dangerous little thing, got the better of me. So I asked Brennan, would you be open to going? He was surprised. You sure? I shrugged. Why not? I didn't say it out loud, but I needed to see her again. Not to argue. Not to cause a scene. I just needed to look her in the eye, knowing what I knew, and see what she did with it. So we went. It was a perfect North Carolina spring morning. Crisp, golden light filtering through the trees, dogwoods blooming. Their lake house looked like something out of a magazine, whitewashed wood, enormous windows, carefully curated throw pillows. Nothing out of place. Nothing ever is. There were about 20 guests. Mostly Blair's Healing Circle friends. Lots of linen pants, herbal teas, barefoot greetings, and lingering hugs. Brennan and I stood near the edge of the patio, him holding Theo in his carrier while I sipped iced chamomile out of a mason jar and watched the crowd. Blair spotted us and floated over. Her makeup was dewy and perfect. Her perfume was something expensive and herbal, like dried roses and eucalyptus. She gave me a soft, tight-lipped smile. "I'm so glad you came," she said, voice airy as ever. "It means so much to us." I nodded. "It's a beautiful day." She looked down at Theo. "He's grown so much. His energy is really radiant." I said nothing. Just smiled, thinly. Let the silence hang. She shifted. "Clara. I hope things have felt better lately. I know I have a long way to go to regain your trust. I'm working on that. I really am." I looked at her then. Really looked. I thought about all the lies she wrapped in pretty phrases. About how she tried to steal part of my mom and call it honoring. About how she rewrote reality in ways that made her the heroine of every chapter. "You've always been good with words," I said. "And intentions." She blinked. I didn't say more. I didn't need to. Because in that moment, I saw something flicker across her face, something unguarded. Like maybe, just maybe, she knew exactly what I was saying. And that I knew more than I had before. She reached out, instinctively, toward my arm. I stepped back, just a little. "I'm not here to punish you," I said quietly. "But I'm also not here to pretend." Then I walked past her, toward Brennan, who was now sitting near the lake with Theo bundled in his arms. We stayed for another half hour. Made polite conversation. Nodded at compliments about the baby. Let Raymond talk about how proud he was of Brennan, and how happy he was to see us there. Then we left. We didn't say goodbye. That night, I told Brennan everything. He sat in silence as I told him what Laurel had said. The attempt Blair had made to take the jewelry. The way she tried to hide it behind spiritual language. The timeline that started earlier than we'd realized. His jaw tensed. "She tried to steal from you." I nodded. "Yeah." He exhaled through his nose. His anger wasn't loud, Brennan never is, but I could feel it in the air around him, humming and tight. "She doesn't come near our house again," he said. "Not unless you want her to. And even then, I know." There was a long pause. Then he looked at me. "I'm sorry. I brought her into your life. I didn't see it." "You couldn't have known," I said. And I meant it. People like Blair? They're good at pretending. They talk about energy and family and love, but it's all about control. All about appearance. And for a while, I fell for it too, the curated sincerity, the polished manipulation. But not anymore. Now I was watching with open eyes. And I had one final thing I needed to do, for me, and for my mom. That night, after Brennan fell asleep beside me, Theo's gentle breaths echoing from the monitor on the nightstand, I sat in the dim glow of our bedroom lamp and pulled out my mom's jewelry box. It had been a while. I hadn't opened it since before the baby shower debacle. Not because I'd forgotten it, quite the opposite. I knew exactly where it was. I just hadn't wanted to feel all of it again, the weight, the ache, the memory of hands holding mine in hospital rooms, of my mother's voice calling me her girl, of her eyes soft with both pride and pain. But now I needed to remember. I lifted the lid slowly. The faint scent of lavender sachets still clung to the velvet lining. My mom always tucked those little pouches into drawers and boxes. Said it kept bad energy away. She would have laughed her ass off at Blair's healing vibrations. I touched each piece gently, the cracked opal ring, the simple bracelet with the tiny charm shaped like a crescent moon, her old locket. The metal was cool against my fingertips, but the memories warmed me. I wasn't ready to forgive Blair. Maybe I never would. But I was ready to reclaim something. I decided to wear one of the pieces for the first time in years. I slipped the moon bracelet around my wrist. It clicked into place easily, like it had been waiting. And just like that, I felt something shift, like my mom had just sat beside me on the bed, legs tucked up under her like she always did, saying, "You're doing just fine, sweetheart." The next day, I called Laurel. She came by that afternoon, holding a coffee in each hand, like she knew I'd need it. We sat in the kitchen while Theo napped, the monitor hissing softly in the background. "I've been thinking," I said, "about what you told me. About Blair. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that yet. But I wanted to say thank you. For telling me the truth. That couldn't have been easy." Laurel looked down at her cup. I wrestled with it. I didn't want to make things worse. But I kept thinking, if someone had done that with Mom's things, she trailed off. We didn't talk about Brennan's mom much. The loss still hung thick in their family, even decades later. She died when Brennan was 13, and Laurel had only been 8. A drunk driver. A Tuesday night. Gone in a second. "Did she leave anything for you?" I asked. Laurel smiled sadly. "A scarf. Perfume. A few letters. Nothing fancy. But they're mine." I nodded. We didn't need diamonds to remember them. Just little pieces of love wrapped in time. I told Laurel about the brunch. About what I'd said. About the way Blair looked, how there was something in her eyes, some flicker of understanding or fear, maybe both. Laurel took a long sip of coffee. "She won't stop trying, you know. That's just who she is." "I know," I said. "But now I see it. That's the difference." Later that week, Raymond texted Brennan and asked if we'd be open to hosting a family dinner at our place, just us, Laurel, her partner, and them. No big gestures. Just food and time, he wrote. Brennan read the message out loud to me as we were folding laundry. "You want to?" he asked, watching me. I thought about it. On one hand, it felt like a step forward. Something normal. A chance to build something new. But on the other hand, I was still sitting with the truth Laurel had told me. The quiet, calculated betrayal. "I'll do it," I said. "But I'm not pretending anymore. If something feels off, I'll say it. If something feels fake, I'm out." He smiled a little. "That's fair." We picked a date. A simple Sunday afternoon. I made baked ziti, garlic bread, and a salad from the tiny garden Brennan and I had started in the backyard. We laid out a picnic blanket for Theo to play on, scattered a few of his toys nearby. Laurel arrived first, bringing homemade lemon bars and her quiet warmth. Her partner, a guy named Simon, helped Brennan hang fairy lights on the porch. It was cozy, easy. Then Raymond and Blair pulled into the driveway. I watched them step out of the car. Raymond looked his age that day, slower, grayer. But Blair, she looked the same as ever. Effortless and polished. But something in her body language was different, smaller. Hesitant, almost. They came in with a bottle of wine and a wrapped gift, a little too wrapped, really. A lot of tissue paper, ribbons, decorative twine. Blair handed it to me like she was approaching a lion. "I found this in Charleston," she said quietly. "Thought you might like it." Inside was a delicate picture frame, silver, with tiny etchings of stars and moons. It was, unmistakably, a nod to the bracelet I'd worn at the brunch. She noticed. She remembered. "Thank you," I said, carefully. "That's thoughtful." She smiled, just barely. I meant it to be. The dinner itself was surprisingly smooth. Laughter came easier than I expected. Raymond and Brennan talked about woodworking projects. Laurel told a story about a goat farm she'd visited on a work trip. Blair mostly listened. When she did speak, she kept it simple. She asked questions about Theo, about my work, about the garden. No weird spiritual lectures. No passive-aggressive compliments. It was almost disarming. But I was still watching. Closely. After dinner, while the others were clearing plates, Blair stepped out onto the porch with me. The air was cool, early summer settling in. "I know I've been difficult," she said quietly, her hands wrapped around a mug. "And I know there's more I could say. But I've learned that sometimes words just aren't enough." I looked at her. Really looked. She meant it. At least right now, in this moment, she did. But I also knew Blair, knew how easily she could slip back into her performance. Into whatever version of sincerity was convenient for the room she was in. So I said, "Words are fine. But behavior's louder." She nodded. "That's fair." Inside, I could hear Theo start to babble. Brennan's voice following, low and soft, singing some made-up lullaby. Blair turned back toward the door, but then paused. "I didn't take anything," she said. "I thought about it." "That's true. And I regret that. Deeply. But I didn't cross that line." I raised an eyebrow. "The line shouldn't have been negotiable in the first place." She nodded again. "And that was it. No more apologies. No tears. Just the truth, finally spoken out loud. I didn't know what to do with it yet. Not fully. But at least now we weren't pretending." Later that night, after they left and Theo was asleep, I opened the picture frame and placed a photo inside, one of my mom holding me as a baby. She's smiling, squinting into the sun, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. I looked so much like Theo in that photo, it almost hurt to breathe. I placed the frame next to the jewelry box on my dresser. Not because it made things right. But because I was claiming the space again, for me, for her, for the truth of all of it. And Blair? She'd either learn what respect meant, or she wouldn't. But I wasn't waiting for her anymore. The summer deepened. Asheville hummed in that familiar, sticky way, cicadas buzzing from the trees, evening thunderstorms rolling in like a sleepy growl. Life around us moved in slow, warm rhythms. Except inside me, where everything felt unsettled in a new, different way. I couldn't stop thinking about the porch conversation. Blair's quiet admission. The almost guilt in her voice. It haunted me more than the betrayal itself, because it wasn't clean. It wasn't some perfect, sharp line I could cut her out along. She didn't take anything. But she would have. And that difference mattered. It complicated everything. I didn't tell Laurel about the conversation. Not yet. She'd be livid. Rightfully so. She'd already made peace with cutting Blair off emotionally, despite still attending family events out of loyalty to Brennan and their father. But me? I was still somewhere in the middle, not forgiving, not forgetting, but watching. And honestly, that was harder. One Sunday afternoon, while Brennan was inside bouncing Theo and singing off-key on purpose to make him giggle, I sat alone on the back porch, flipping through an old notebook I'd kept after my mom died. A grief journal, technically. At the time, my therapist had told me to write everything, the good, the ugly, the mundane. I hadn't looked at it in over 4 years. But now, I needed her voice again. I needed to remember how I felt before Blair ever entered our lives. Before grief was weaponized against me. Before love was twisted into some performative display of spiritual charity. The entries were raw. Choppy. Some days I wrote 5 pages. Some days just a single line, I miss her voice. I don't know how to cook without her looking over my shoulder. I didn't cry today. I feel guilty. I wore her earrings to the grocery store and kept touching them the whole time. I reached one entry dated almost exactly a year before Theo was born. It read, "I hope one day when I have a baby, I can tell them how strong she was. I hope I remember the way she held me when I was scared. The way she said, 'Sweetheart, we're allowed to feel everything.' I hope I don't lose that." I closed the notebook and felt a lump rise in my throat. That's what Blair didn't understand. That's what Raymond couldn't see. The jewelry wasn't stuff. It was story. It was safety. It was history being carried forward, woman to woman, mother to daughter, without needing a word. Later that week, we got a call from Raymond. He wanted to invite us to a small dinner at a nearby mountain lodge. Just family, he said. A thank you for the way things had been healing. Brennan looked at me after he hung up. Your call. I thought about it. I thought about Blair and her clean, curated kitchen. About her suddenly softer demeanor. About the gift. The picture frame. The almost apology. I thought about Theo growing up watching how we navigated difficult people, complicated emotions, messy family dynamics. Let's go, I said. The lodge was tucked into the trees just outside Black Mountain, about 40 minutes from Asheville. The kind of place with rocking chairs on every porch, hummingbird feeders dangling from the eaves, and blackberry bushes climbing the split rail fences. The dinner table was already set when we arrived, candlelight flickering against white plates, little cards with our names on them like it was Thanksgiving. Raymond greeted us warmly. Genuinely, I think. There was still weight in his eyes, some blend of gratitude and guilt he hadn't quite shaken since the hospital. Blair was already seated. She stood when she saw us and smiled. No grand hug. No awkward comment. Just a nod. Laurel and Simon were there too. Laurel raised an eyebrow at me across the table when Blair offered to hold Theo during appetizers. I shook my head politely. We made small talk. Brennan asked about a hiking trail he wanted to try with his dad. Raymond told a long story about how he'd lost a fishing rod in the French Broad River years ago. It was normal. Uncomfortably so. And then the server brought out the last course. Dessert. And with it, Blair stood. I'd like to say something, she said, voice quiet but firm. Everyone went still. Even Theo, who had been gnawing on a plastic teether, paused and looked around like he knew drama was in the air. I know we've all been through a lot this past year, she began. And I've said before that I regret how I handled things. But I want to be clearer now, especially to Clara. She turned to me. I crossed boundaries I had no right to cross. I dressed it up in spiritual language because that's what I do when I'm afraid of being rejected. And I see now how manipulative that was. The table was silent. Brennan's hand slid across my leg under the table and rested there. I tried to make myself part of something sacred to you, Blair continued. And worse, I didn't really understand what I was asking for. That's not just ignorance, that's disrespect. She took a breath. I've spoken to my therapist about this. A lot. And I know I can't undo what I did. But I want to ask, not for forgiveness, not yet, but for permission to keep trying to be a part of this family in a way that honors everyone's boundaries. Even if that means stepping back. And then, to my shock, she sat down. No tears. No applause. Just that. I didn't know what to say. Not right away. Everyone at the table was looking at me, Laurel with her arms folded, Brennan gently squeezing my knee, Raymond blinking like he wasn't quite sure what had just happened. So I took a breath. Thank you for saying that, I said carefully. That's more honesty than I've ever heard from you. Blair nodded. I mean it. I know, I said. I believe you mean it now. It was quiet after that. Not awkward. Just quiet. And that quiet said more than any prayer circle or meditation session ever could. We left the lodge under a sky full of stars. Brennan carried Theo to the car while I paused outside the door, letting the cool air hit my face, clearing the emotional fog of that dinner. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded. Yeah. I think I am. And I meant it. For the first time in a long time. But later that night, as I undressed for bed, I noticed something strange. The drawer where I kept my mom's jewelry box? It was slightly open. Not enough to notice if you weren't looking. Just a few centimeters. Like someone had opened it, and maybe forgot to close it all the way. I froze. Then slowly pulled the drawer out. Everything was still there. Every piece. Every charm. Every memory. But my stomach turned anyway. Had I opened it earlier and forgotten? Had Laurel been in the room? Had Theo knocked it when we brought him in? I didn't know. But the feeling in my gut wouldn't leave. A flicker of uncertainty. Because healing and truth are two different things. And sometimes, even the most heartfelt apology can cast a long, quiet shadow. That one, barely open drawer haunted me for days. It wasn't just about the jewelry anymore. It wasn't even about the apology. It was about trust. And once that's cracked, no matter how carefully someone tries to patch it up, the seams still show. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe I had left it open without realizing. Maybe the housekeeper brushed it while dusting. Maybe. But maybe doesn't sit well in your chest when you've already lived through betrayal once. So, I did what I never thought I'd do. I decided to test Blair. Not to catch her. Not out of pettiness. But because I needed proof. I needed clarity. Not just for me, but for Brennan. For Theo. I didn't want my son growing up in a house where the lessons were smile at liars and pretend everything's fine when it's not. So I set a trap. I took a single ring from the jewelry box, not my mom's most sentimental piece, but one she used to wear often, a turquoise and silver band she'd bought on a trip to Santa Fe with her best friend. It was pretty, noticeable, but not flashy. Something Blair might think she could borrow without it being missed. Then I placed it in a smaller, velvet-lined case and set it at the back of the drawer. Carefully positioned, just so. Then I waited. We invited Raymond and Blair over again for dinner. Nothing formal. Brennan grilled on the back deck. I made my mom's lemon herb potatoes. We kept things casual, like we were slowly becoming a new kind of family. Halfway through the evening, I excused myself and slipped upstairs. Checked the drawer. The small case was gone. Not moved. Not nudged. Gone. My chest tightened, but I didn't panic. I just walked back down the stairs and poured Blair another glass of sparkling water. She smiled like nothing was out of place. And maybe to her, nothing was. That's when I knew, she still thought she could get away with it. But this time, I had a plan. The next morning, while Brennan took Theo to the park, I called Laurel. Told her everything. The ring. The trap. The disappearance. Her reaction? I knew it. She can't help herself. Then I called a friend of mine, Naomi, who runs a vintage boutique in Asheville. We'd gone to college together. She's stylish, discreet, and fiercely loyal. I asked her if she'd do me a favor. I need you to call Blair, I said, and tell her you're interested in buying vintage jewelry for a client. High-end, but subtle. Turquoise, if possible. Tell her someone mentioned she collects Southwestern pieces. Naomi was quiet for a beat, then said, Clara. Are we doing a sting operation? Not quite, I said. Just shining a light. Within a day, Blair took the bait. She showed up to Naomi's boutique 2 days later with a silk scarf tied around her neck and 3 rings in a small zip pouch. Guess which one was in the middle? Naomi played it perfectly. She didn't accuse. She didn't question. She simply examined the ring under the light, complimented it, and asked if Blair would be willing to leave it for appraisal. Blair agreed, probably thinking she could spin some tale about how it was a gift or a family piece. She signed a quick slip Naomi typed up, just a basic release form saying the ring was hers to be appraised. I had what I needed. The next weekend, I invited everyone over again. Same casual vibe. Grilled flatbreads, chilled wine, Theo in a sun hat wobbling across the grass like a tiny drunk man. Once dinner was cleared and we'd settled into porch chairs with dessert, I brought out a small white box and placed it in front of Blair. What's this? She asked, eyes bright. Just something I thought you might recognize. She opened the box. Inside, the ring. Her smile faltered, but just slightly. She glanced up at me, then at Brennan, who was watching her closely now. "That's beautiful," she said slowly. "It looks like something I had years ago." "Where did you find it?" "Naomi," I said. "You know her, she owns that boutique downtown." "Said you stopped by with it recently." Raymond's brow furrowed. "Wait, you sold jewelry to Naomi?" Blair opened her mouth. "Closed it." "I didn't sell it," she said finally. "I was helping a friend. She asked me to bring it in." "No, Blair," I said, my voice steady. "You took it from my house. From my drawer. After apologizing. After claiming you wanted to rebuild trust. You stole from me. Again." She went pale. Brennan stood. "Is this true?" I didn't know it was Clara's." "Stop." His voice was cold. "Just stop." Raymond looked between us, stunned, but said nothing. "I set the trap," I said. "Because I knew. I knew the apology was a performance. I just didn't have proof. Now I do." And then I pulled out the copy of the signed slip Naomi had given me, the one where Blair declared ownership of the ring. I placed it gently on the table. "That's fraud, by the way. Not just bad energy." Laurel choked on her lemonade. There was a long, BR-tal silence. Then Blair stood up. "I think we should go." "No," I said. "I think you should go." Raymond hesitated. "Clara, you're welcome to stay," I told him. "But she's not." He looked at Blair. Then at Brennan. Then quietly said, "I'll get a ride." She left. Not with a fight. Not with tears. Just silence. And I realized in that moment, that was the real Blair. Not the wellness guru, not the intuitive step-grandma. Just a woman who wanted to belong so badly that she thought she could fake her way into legacy, steal her way into love. And she failed. Because this time I wasn't the girl who let it slide. I wasn't the grieving daughter, too polite to protect what was mine. I was a mother now. And a daughter still. And I'd had enough. After she left, Brennan and I sat outside under the string lights, watching Theo wiggle in his little blanket nest. "She's out for good now," he said. "She doesn't come back from that." I nodded. "I know." "You okay?" I looked at my son. At the trees. At the house I'd made a home. "I am," I said. "Really?" That night, I put the ring back in its box. Then I locked the jewelry drawer. Not out of fear, but out of principle. And the next morning, I took the picture frame Blair had given me, the one I'd accepted when I thought we were rebuilding something real, and I packed it away in a storage bin in the garage. Because some gifts, like some people, look beautiful, until you turn them over and see what they're really made of. And me? I didn't need fake peace anymore. I had truth. I had family. I had legacy. And I had every single piece of my mother's memory, safe, untouched, and mine.